The morning sun filtered through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow on the familiar surroundings of my home. I moved through my routine with practiced ease, the rhythmic sounds of coffee brewing and toast popping providing a comforting soundtrack to my day. Richmond was waking up outside, the city bustling with life, but inside these walls, I found solace in the mundane. My husband was already in his study, engrossed in his work, as he often was. I had always cherished this quiet life we built together, our routines intertwined like the roots of ancient trees. Yet today, something shifted beneath the surface of my calm existence. The presence of my husband's adopted grandson lingered in my mind, an unwelcome thought that disrupted my tranquility. He had moved in recently, a bright-eyed young man full of energy and ambition, and I could not shake the feeling that his gaze lingered on me longer than it should. As I poured myself a cup of coffee, I caught a glimpse of him through the window. He was out in the garden, kneeling beside the blooming azaleas, his hands deep in the soil. I watched him for a moment longer than necessary before turning away. The sight stirred something within me, a forgotten memory from my youth when such simple moments felt charged with possibility. Later that evening, we gathered for dinner as a family. The table was set with care, candles flickered softly against the backdrop of laughter and conversation. My husband spoke animatedly about his day while I served roasted chicken and vegetables. The atmosphere was light, yet an undercurrent of tension pulsed through me like an electric wire. It happened almost imperceptibly at first, a fleeting glance across the table that sent shivers down my spine. He looked at me as if he could see through to some hidden part of myself I had long kept buried. My heart raced unexpectedly. I quickly turned my gaze to my plate, focusing on each bite as if it were a lifeline. "Everything all right?" My husband's voice broke through my thoughts. "Of course," I replied too quickly. The rest of dinner passed in a blur, laughter echoed around me while I fought to maintain composure. But every now and then, our eyes would meet, his gaze intense and searching, and each time felt like a small explosion within me. After dinner, we cleared the table together. He stood close behind me as we rinsed dishes under warm water, our shoulders brushing occasionally. Each touch sent waves of confusion crashing over me. This was not how things were meant to be. "Do you need help with anything else?" he asked casually, his voice low and inviting. "No, thank you," I managed to say without looking back at him. As I finished drying off a plate, an unexpected memory surfaced, a summer evening from years ago when love felt uncomplicated and exhilarating. It was as if time folded back on itself for just an instant. I could almost hear laughter echoing from another life where desire didn't carry such heavy consequences. Suddenly aware that I had been lost in thought for too long, I turned around only to find him staring at me intently, his expression unreadable yet charged with unspoken words. A rush of heat flooded my cheeks as our eyes locked momentarily before he looked away as if he had been caught trespassing into forbidden territory. I hurriedly placed the last dish into the drying rack and stepped back from him as if retreating from danger itself. This wasn't right, these feelings were wrong on so many levels. Later that night, lying awake beside my husband who slept soundly next to me, I wrestled with this newfound awareness stirring inside me like a tempest threatening to break free. Thoughts collided chaotically. Was it infatuation? Was it merely loneliness? Or something much more profound? In those quiet hours before dawn broke over Richmond's skyline, clarity eluded me entirely while shadows danced across walls illuminated by moonlight filtering through curtains drawn tight against prying eyes. The following days brought no relief, instead they deepened this unsettling awareness each time our paths crossed within our shared home filled with memories both cherished and complicated by this new dynamic introduced into our lives without warning or consent. I found myself avoiding moments alone with him whenever possible, yet circumstances seemed determined to conspire against my efforts toward maintaining distance between us, a shared grocery run here or accidental brush against one another there. The world outside continued spinning forward oblivious while inside these walls tension mounted steadily like an impending storm ready to unleash its fury upon unsuspecting souls trapped within its grasp. I could feel myself spiraling into thoughts best left untouched until one evening during another family gathering, the air thick with laughter mingling seamlessly alongside unspoken truths hanging heavily overhead. I caught him watching me again from across the room while others chatted animatedly around us unaware entirely of what lay beneath their jovial exchanges. Two souls caught in an intricate web woven from threads both delicate yet unbreakable binding us together despite everything, threatening their unraveling at any moment's notice should someone dare tug too hard on one end or another, inadvertently revealing secrets better left hidden away forevermore. The evening air was thick with the scent of freshly baked bread and simmering sauces wafting from the kitchen, mingling with the laughter of family gathered in the living room. I busied myself at the counter, slicing vegetables while stealing glances at him from the corner of my eye. He sat on the couch, engaged in a conversation with my husband, his laughter ringing out like a melody that resonated deep within me. I should have felt content in this familial scene, but instead, it only heightened my internal struggle. As I chopped the onions, their sharpness mirrored the tension coiling within me. I attempted to push aside my feelings, labeling them as mere infatuation, a fleeting moment of weakness that would fade as quickly as it had arrived. Yet every time our eyes met, an unspoken connection sparked between us, igniting something I had long thought extinguished. I recalled how he had looked at me during dinner last week, his gaze lingering just a moment too long before he turned away. That instant replayed in my mind like a favorite song stuck on repeat. It was maddening and exhilarating all at once. The more I tried to dismiss these thoughts, the more they consumed me. Later that week, I found myself wandering into a local cafe on Broad Street after running errands. The familiar hum of conversation and clinking of cups offered a comforting backdrop as I settled into my usual corner table. The cafe was bustling with life, people chatted animatedly over steaming mugs while sunlight streamed through large windows. Just as I took a sip of my coffee, he walked in, tall and effortlessly charming. My heart skipped a beat despite my best efforts to remain composed. He scanned the room until our eyes met. There was no escaping the pull that drew us together in that crowded space. "Mind if I join you?" he asked casually, though we both knew there was nothing casual about this encounter. "Of course," I replied, trying to keep my tone light despite the weight of our shared secret looming between us. We exchanged pleasantries, discussing everything and nothing as we sipped our drinks. The conversation flowed easily. Laughter punctuated our words like punctuation marks in an otherwise serious narrative. But beneath this facade lay an undercurrent of tension that neither of us could ignore. Then it happened, a moment so unexpected yet entirely inevitable given our circumstances. He leaned closer across the table, his voice dropping to a whisper as he spoke about his dreams and aspirations. His breath brushed against my cheek, sending shivers down my spine. In that instant, everything outside faded away, the noise of the cafe dimmed to silence as if we existed in our own world. Without thinking, without weighing consequences or societal norms, we kissed, softly at first but quickly deepening into something more fervent than either of us anticipated. Time stood still around us until reality crashed back when I heard a familiar voice calling out from behind me. "Hey! There you are." My husband's cheerful tone shattered the moment like glass breaking against stone. Panic surged through me as I pulled away abruptly, eyes wide with alarm. He stood there smiling obliviously while confusion washed over his face when he saw us sitting so close together. "What's going on?" My husband's brow furrowed slightly as he glanced between us. "Just catching up," I managed to say with an awkward smile that felt foreign on my lips. He nodded slowly but didn't move away from where he stood near our table, a looming presence that felt heavier than usual now that we had crossed an invisible line neither of us could uncross. After some small talk filled with forced laughter and nervous glances exchanged beneath the table where our hands had just been intertwined moments before, my husband suggested heading home for dinner. "Let's get back before everything gets cold," he said cheerfully while placing his hand on my shoulder possessively, a gesture meant to reassure yet somehow suffocating under these new circumstances. I nodded numbly but felt his presence linger like smoke clinging to clothes long after leaving behind a fire, the warmth mixed with dread swirling inside me as we made our way back home together. Once inside our house again, my sanctuary turned prison, I busied myself in the kitchen while trying to shake off what had just transpired between us at that cafe. My mind raced with thoughts. How could we have let it happen? What did it mean for both of us? But even amidst this turmoil came moments when our paths would cross again, unexpected encounters filled with stolen glances and lingering touches that ignited sparks within me once more despite knowing better than to indulge these feelings any further. Days passed slowly, each one stretched out like taffy pulled too thin until finally culminating into another family gathering, a weekend barbecue planned by my husband who hoped for nothing more than good food and laughter shared among loved ones. As guests arrived throughout the afternoon, familiar faces mingling alongside new acquaintances, I felt him nearby even before laying eyes upon him again, an electric charge coursing through me whenever he entered a room filled with chatter and warmth from sizzling grills outside under golden sunlight filtering through leafy trees overhead. I caught sight of him chatting animatedly with others gathered around while serving drinks, his smile brightening up even the dullest conversations taking place nearby, and couldn't help but admire how effortlessly charming he appeared among friends who adored him wholeheartedly without knowing what lay beneath their admiration, secrets hidden behind closed doors waiting patiently for their chance to escape into daylight once more. But then came moments where we found ourselves alone together amidst all this revelry. The two of us slipping away unnoticed into quieter corners where whispers echoed louder than shouts surrounding us elsewhere until reality crashed back around those barriers built up carefully over time threatening their very existence every second spent together alone. Each encounter only served to deepen this connection forged from shared secrets held close against prying eyes watching closely. Yet every kiss exchanged came laced heavily with guilt woven tightly through threads binding hearts caught between loyalty toward family versus desire pulling them apart against every instinct urging caution instead. And so it continued, the unending cycle spinning round and round until finally reaching its breaking point when tensions reached their peak one fateful evening during yet another family gathering filled with laughter masking truths hidden beneath layers carefully crafted over years spent together. In those moments leading up toward inevitable confrontation looming ahead like shadows cast across sunlit paths walked daily without thought or hesitation now suddenly fraught with danger lurking just beyond reach waiting patiently for someone brave enough, or foolish enough, to take that step forward risking everything held dear. The evening air was thick with unspoken words, each moment stretching into eternity as I navigated the delicate balance between my family and the growing connection that had developed in secret. I could sense his presence nearby, an electric tension crackling in the space between us, a silent acknowledgement of what had transpired. Our lips met only days before, a fleeting yet profound encounter that lingered in my mind like an unfinished sentence. As I prepared dinner, the familiar sounds of pots clanging and the aroma of roasted vegetables filled the house. My husband was in the living room, engrossed in a book, blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing just beneath the surface. I moved about the kitchen with purpose, but my thoughts drifted to him, the grandson who had become a constant source of distraction. Each time our eyes met, it felt like we were sharing a secret language that no one else could understand. "Are you okay?" My husband's voice broke through my reverie, pulling me back to reality. He looked up from his book, concern etched on his face. "You seem distant." "I'm fine," I replied too quickly, forcing a smile that felt brittle at best. "Just a long day." He nodded but didn't look convinced. I resumed chopping vegetables, trying to focus on the rhythm of my movements rather than the weight of my hidden feelings. The clock ticked steadily toward dinner time, soon we would gather around the table as a family, a facade that felt increasingly fragile. After dinner, as we cleared away plates and glasses, I caught sight of him standing by the window, watching the fading light outside. There was an intensity in his gaze that made my heart race. It was as if he were waiting for something, an invitation or perhaps a sign that it was okay to breach this unspoken boundary between us. "Do you want to help me with dessert?" I asked casually, hoping to create an opportunity for us to steal a moment alone. "Sure," he replied with a hint of enthusiasm that made me smile inwardly. As we moved into the kitchen together, our shoulders brushed against one another, a small contact that sent shivers down my spine. We worked side by side, mixing ingredients and sharing light conversation about nothing in particular. Yet every word felt charged with meaning, every laugh echoed with an undercurrent of tension. "Have you thought about going back to school?" he asked suddenly, breaking through my thoughts again. I paused for a moment before responding. "I have considered it," I admitted slowly. "But it feels like such a big step." "Why not? You've always wanted to teach." His eyes sparkled with encouragement. The sincerity in his voice stirred something deep within me, an urge to explore not just academic pursuits but also this inexplicable connection we shared. But reality loomed large over any fantasies I dared entertain. Before long, dessert was ready and we joined my husband at the table again. The conversation flowed easily enough among us, discussions about work and plans for upcoming family events, but beneath it all simmered an undeniable tension that felt palpable even in casual exchanges. Later that evening, when my husband excused himself to take a phone call in another room, I found myself alone with him once more. The silence stretched between us like an untraveled road leading into unknown territory. "I don't think we should keep pretending," he said softly after several moments had passed, a confession hanging heavily in the air around us. "What do you mean?" My heart raced at his words as they hung suspended between fear and longing. "I mean, this." He gestured vaguely between us before stepping closer until there was barely any space left at all. "What happened wasn't just some mistake." Our lips met again then, this time slower and more deliberate than before, as if both of us were testing how far this connection could stretch without breaking completely under its weight. Suddenly aware of how wrong this all was yet unable to pull away from him completely, it felt like stepping off a cliff into unknown depths below where consequences awaited without mercy or reprieve. A sound from down the hallway jolted me back into reality. It was my husband returning from his call. Panic surged through me as I pulled away instinctively just before he entered the room again, his presence casting shadows over what had just transpired moments earlier. "Everything all right?" he asked casually while glancing between us both suspiciously yet unaware of how close we'd come to crossing lines neither could ever uncross again once they were drawn clearly upon life's canvas painted so carefully over years spent together amidst laughter and love, shared openly among family members who trusted one another implicitly without question or hesitation until now. "Yes," I replied too quickly once more as I busied myself cleaning up remnants left behind from our earlier indulgence, a distraction against mounting guilt rising within me like tidewater threatening to spill over its banks during stormy weather ahead. When bedtime finally arrived later that night after more forced conversations filled with polite laughter masking truths hidden beneath layers carefully crafted over years spent together, it felt almost surreal slipping beneath sheets knowing full well tomorrow would bring another family gathering where appearances mattered most amidst whispers echoing silently throughout halls filled with memories long cherished yet now tinged by uncertainty lurking just beyond reach waiting patiently for someone brave enough, or foolish enough, to take that step forward risking everything held dear. Sleep eluded me entirely. Thoughts spiraled endlessly through tangled webs woven intricately around emotions untamed by societal expectations pressing heavily down upon shoulders already burdened by choices made against better judgment born out of desire conflicting deeply against loyalty sworn long ago. The next morning brought no relief either, sunlight streamed through curtains illuminating shadows cast across familiar spaces where secrets thrived hidden behind closed doors waiting patiently for someone brave enough, or foolish enough, to risk everything held dear. And then came an invitation. A family event looming on our calendar like an ominous storm cloud gathering strength overhead readying itself for inevitable confrontation brewing beneath surface calmness masking chaos threatening to erupt at any moment should tensions rise too high above acceptable limits set forth by unwritten rules governing relationships built upon trust forged through years spent together navigating life's winding paths hand in hand without question until now. The family event approached with an intensity one couldn't ignore. Each day felt like a countdown, the date marked on the calendar looming like a specter over my thoughts. I moved through our home, performing daily rituals while my mind wrestled with a tumult of emotions. Guilt and confusion mingled with a strange exhilaration, creating an internal storm that left me feeling unmoored. I tried to focus on mundane tasks, dusting shelves, arranging flowers in the kitchen, but every corner of our home seemed to echo with unspoken words and lingering glances. The moments we shared felt like secrets stitched into the fabric of our lives, each thread pulling tighter as the event neared. I found myself avoiding my husband's gaze, fearful he might see through the facade I desperately tried to maintain. One evening, as I stood by the window watching raindrops race down the glass, I heard footsteps behind me. My husband entered the room, his expression warm yet concerned. "You've been quiet lately," he said gently. "I'm just tired," I replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "Maybe we should take a short trip before the event?" "Just you and me," he suggested. The offer hung in the air like an anchor threatening to pull me under. A getaway sounded appealing, an escape from this tangled web of emotions, but it also felt like a trap. How could I leave when everything was so unsettled? "That sounds nice," I replied cautiously, trying to mask my turmoil. As he spoke about potential destinations, my mind wandered back to him, the grandson who had become an unexpected presence in my life. The thought of leaving him behind filled me with dread and longing. Those stolen moments together were woven into my consciousness now, impossible to forget or dismiss. Later that night, after dinner had settled and silence enveloped us like a thick blanket, I found myself wandering into the living room alone. The dim light cast shadows across familiar furniture, each piece seemed charged with memories that pulsed beneath the surface. My heart raced as I recalled our last encounter, the thrill of being together despite knowing how wrong it was. When he entered quietly behind me, the air shifted instantly. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. I turned to face him, his gaze held a mixture of concern and something deeper that sent shivers down my spine. "I'm just thinking," I replied. "About what?" His voice was low and inviting. "About everything." There was no need for further explanation, we both understood what everything encompassed. He stepped closer, closing the distance between us until all that separated us was an unspoken tension thick enough to cut through. My heart pounded as memories flooded back, the kiss we shared at that cafe, our lips met in a moment that felt both thrilling and terrifying. "Do you regret it?" he asked suddenly, his eyes searching mine for answers. "No," came my honest response before I could second-guess myself. The truth lay bare between us like an open wound, raw and exposed yet strangely comforting in its honesty. His hand reached out tentatively, brushing against mine, a spark igniting at our touch that sent waves of heat coursing through me. In that instant, all doubts fell away, all thoughts of consequences faded into oblivion as desire took hold of reason. We spent the night together, became an undeniable reality as we crossed lines drawn by circumstance and expectation. Wrapped in each other's arms beneath soft sheets illuminated by moonlight filtering through curtains, time slipped away unnoticed until morning light crept into our sanctuary. But with dawn came clarity, a harsh reminder of where we stood within this tangled web of relationships built on trust but now threatened by secrets lurking just beneath the surface. As sunlight streamed across my face, guilt washed over me in waves, regret clawed at my insides while reality crashed down around us like a tidal wave threatening to drown any chance of normalcy we'd managed to create amidst chaos. I lay there silently grappling with conflicting emotions when suddenly footsteps echoed outside our door, a reminder that life continued beyond these walls even as turmoil brewed within them. Panic surged through me. What if someone discovered us? What if everything unraveled before I had a chance to make sense of it all? Before long, my husband's voice broke through my spiraling thoughts, his cheerful tone contrasting sharply with my inner turmoil as he called out excitedly about plans for our getaway. I've arranged everything. We'll leave tomorrow morning. The words hung heavy in the air between us, a promise wrapped in love yet tinged with betrayal's bitter taste lingering on my tongue like poison seeping slowly into every corner of our lives together. How could I face him now? How could I pretend nothing had changed when everything felt irrevocably altered? I glanced sideways at him still sleeping peacefully beside me, unaware of the storm brewing within me or how close we were teetering on edge between loyalty and desire threatening to consume us whole without warning if given half a chance. With every passing moment spent together under this roof became increasingly unbearable. Each glance exchanged filled with unspoken words weighed heavily upon both our hearts as if they were shackles binding us tightly together yet pushing us further apart at once. A paradox only love could create amid chaos swirling around us, relentlessly demanding attention while forcing choices upon fragile souls caught between duty and longing, struggling against tides beyond control. As daylight broke fully over Richmond's skyline outside our window, painting everything anew in golden hues, promising hope yet hiding shadows lurking just beneath surface calmness, waiting patiently for someone brave enough, or foolish enough, to confront truths buried deep within hearts yearning for freedom from constraints imposed by society's expectations. With one final glance toward him still lost in slumber beside me, I made up my mind: clarity must come before departure. Decisions needed addressing before stepping outside this cocoon woven from threads spun by passion entwined dangerously close around fragile family ties, threatening unraveling completely should secrets remain hidden too long. I stood in the kitchen, the sunlight filtering through the window, casting warm patterns on the worn linoleum floor. The aroma of coffee filled the air, a daily ritual that had become my solace amid the chaos of emotions swirling within me. My husband's footsteps echoed down the hall, a reminder of his presence, both comforting and suffocating. As I poured a cup, I caught a glimpse of him in the mirror, his reflection a stark contrast to my own turmoil. He was oblivious to the storm brewing beneath my calm exterior. I turned away quickly, not wanting to meet his gaze just yet. The weight of secrecy pressed heavily on my chest. Every moment felt like an act in a play where I no longer knew my lines. The tension in our home had escalated since that night when everything changed. Each shared meal felt charged with unspoken words and hidden glances. I could almost hear the silence screaming between us. My husband often remarked on my distracted demeanor, but I brushed off his concerns with vague reassurances. Just tired, I would say, forcing a smile that never quite reached my eyes. A sudden noise from the living room pulled me from my thoughts. My husband had turned on the television. The news anchor's voice droned on about local events and community happenings, but all I could focus on was how different everything felt now. The news was an echo of life outside our home, life that continued while mine seemed stuck in limbo. I moved to join him in the living room, but as I approached, I overheard snippets of conversation that made me pause. "She's been acting strange lately," he said to himself as he flicked through channels. "I hope everything is all right." My heart sank further into an abyss of guilt and confusion. "Everything's fine," I said as I entered, forcing cheerfulness into my tone. He looked up at me with concern etched across his face. "You sure? You've seemed distant." "Just busy with work," I replied quickly, hoping to deflect any deeper inquiry. He nodded but didn't seem convinced. The unease settled like a thick fog between us as we exchanged pleasantries about our day ahead. After breakfast, he left for work, and silence enveloped me once more. The house felt too big without him, a cavernous space filled with memories and shadows of choices made and not made. As soon as he stepped out the door, I found myself reaching for my phone instinctively. The screen lit up with messages from him, the grandson, each one igniting a flicker of warmth within me despite the chaos it represented. We had shared so much in recent weeks, laughter over coffee at local cafes and stolen moments when no one else was around. But now those memories were tainted by guilt and uncertainty. I hesitated before responding. Each message felt like a thread pulling tighter around me, binding me to an impossible situation where loyalty clashed with desire. "Can we meet?" read his last text. The question loomed over me like an impending storm cloud threatening to burst open at any moment. Part of me longed for connection, another part screamed for restraint. This was wrong on so many levels. I paced back and forth in the kitchen before finally typing back, "Yes." The decision was made, there would be no turning back now. Later that afternoon, we met at Maymont Park, a place filled with beauty that seemed at odds with my inner turmoil. The gardens were alive with color. Families strolled leisurely along paths lined with blooming azaleas while children laughed nearby. He arrived moments later, looking casual yet somehow more mature than before, a young man caught between boyhood charm and adult responsibility. Our eyes met across a small pond where ducks paddled lazily by. For just a moment, it felt as though time stood still. "I'm glad you came," he said softly as he approached. "Me too," I managed to reply while fighting against the urge to step closer, to bridge that gap filled with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. We walked side by side along winding paths shaded by towering trees overhead, nature's embrace providing some comfort amidst our tangled emotions. But even here, surrounded by beauty, there was an unmistakable heaviness hanging between us. "I've been thinking," he started hesitantly before pausing as if searching for the right words amidst swirling thoughts just like mine. "What about?" He took a deep breath before continuing, "About us, what this is." My heart raced at his words, a mixture of fear and excitement coursing through me like wildfire threatening to consume everything in its path if left unchecked. "It's complicated," I replied cautiously, feeling vulnerable under his gaze. "I know it is," he said earnestly, stepping closer so that our shoulders brushed against each other, an electric connection igniting something deep within both of us despite reality looming ever-present around us like shadows on sunlit grass. Just then, laughter erupted nearby as children chased after one another near a fountain, their carefree joy contrasting sharply against our heavy hearts weighed down by secrets untold and choices unmade. "I can't keep pretending everything is normal," he confessed, suddenly breaking through my thoughts again, his voice low yet firm, reflecting determination mingled with vulnerability so palpable it sent shivers down my spine. Before I could respond or even process what this meant for us moving forward amid uncertainty surrounding everything else in life, the sound of familiar footsteps echoed behind us, drawing nearer, a figure approaching who could shatter this moment entirely if they chose to engage further. My husband appeared from behind some bushes, his expression unreadable yet tinged with suspicion as he caught sight of us together beneath those blooming branches where hope once flourished freely without constraints imposed by society's expectations. The tension in the air was palpable as my husband stepped closer, his brow furrowed with concern. He had always been perceptive, and now, standing there amid the vibrant blooms, I felt exposed. The grandson's presence beside me became a weight I could no longer bear. My heart raced, not from fear of being caught, but from the conflict brewing within me. "What are you two doing here?" my husband asked, his tone light but laced with an undercurrent of something deeper. I could see him scanning our faces for signs of guilt or complicity. The grandson straightened up, suddenly aware of the precariousness of our situation. "Just enjoying the park," he replied casually, yet his voice betrayed a hint of nervousness. I could sense his discomfort. This was not how he envisioned declaring his feelings. The flowers around us seemed to mock our predicament, their beauty contrasting sharply with the turmoil inside me. I wanted to reach out to my husband, reassure him that there was nothing amiss, yet how could I? The truth loomed over us like dark clouds threatening rain. "Let's head back," my husband suggested after a moment's silence. His eyes flicked between us, searching for answers in our expressions. I nodded, feeling a wave of relief wash over me as we began walking back toward the car. The grandson fell into step beside me, and despite everything that had just transpired, an electric tension lingered in the air. As we approached the vehicle, my husband turned to me. "You seem distant lately," he said softly. "Is everything all right?" I hesitated. How could I answer without revealing the truth? "Just tired," I finally managed to say, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. He nodded but didn't look convinced. The drive home was filled with silence punctuated only by the sound of tires on pavement and my racing thoughts. What would happen if my husband found out? Could he ever forgive me? Or would this secret consume us all? Later that evening, as we sat around the dinner table, my husband animatedly discussing work while I pushed food around on my plate, I stole glances at the grandson seated across from me. He caught my eye once and offered a small smile that sent a shiver down my spine. It was a reminder of everything we were trying to hide and yet couldn't escape. After dinner concluded and dishes were cleared away, I found myself retreating to the living room alone while my husband settled in front of the television for some mindless entertainment, a routine comfort for him after long days at work. I needed space to think but soon heard footsteps approaching from behind. The grandson appeared in the doorway, hesitating briefly before stepping inside. "I need to talk to you," he said quietly, closing the door behind him as if sealing off any chance of being overheard. My heart raced again at his words, they held both promise and danger. "Now isn't really a good time," I whispered urgently. He took a step closer, his expression earnest yet conflicted. "We can't keep pretending this doesn't exist." I felt cornered by his intensity, it was both exhilarating and terrifying. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to acknowledge what's happening between us," he replied firmly but softly, a plea wrapped in determination. My mind spun with conflicting emotions. Guilt over betraying my husband mingled with an undeniable attraction that had grown too strong to ignore entirely. "This isn't just about us," I cautioned him gently. "Then let's discuss it openly," he urged, desperation creeping into his voice. Before I could respond or even consider how to navigate this conversation without causing further harm, my husband's voice called from down the hall, "Everything okay in there?" The grandson stepped back instinctively as if caught doing something wrong, a reaction that mirrored exactly what we both felt inside. My heart sank at how easily we were thrust back into our roles, one as devoted wife and one as loyal grandson, each masking our true selves beneath layers of societal expectation. "We're fine." I called out too quickly, even as those words left my lips, they felt hollow against what lay beneath them. Moments later when my husband entered the room looking for reassurance in our expressions again, the atmosphere shifted once more into something stiflingly normal. The tension dissipated like mist under sunlight but left behind an uneasy residue that clung stubbornly in its place. In an attempt to divert attention away from what had almost transpired moments before, I engaged in light conversation about weekend plans while stealing furtive glances at the grandson who remained silent now. His eyes clouded with unspoken words and emotions swirling just beneath surface level where none dared venture openly anymore. As night fell outside and shadows lengthened across familiar spaces within our home, I couldn't shake off feelings gnawing at edges of consciousness like hungry creatures waiting for darkness itself to consume them whole. Days passed following that encounter. Each moment became increasingly fraught with unacknowledged tensions simmering just beneath surface calmness we tried desperately maintaining around family gatherings or casual outings together. An invitation arrived unexpectedly one afternoon, a local festival promising vibrant colors amidst autumn leaves dancing through Richmond streets, it seemed harmless enough yet held potential for confrontation lurking beneath festive surface. I glanced at it lying atop kitchen counter between cups filled with coffee gone cold, its very presence igniting thoughts spiraling through mind like wildfires spreading unchecked. Should we attend? Should we risk exposure among friends who knew nothing about struggles hidden behind closed doors? Or perhaps it would be best simply avoiding temptation altogether? Yet deep down within, the idea of facing both men amidst laughter ringing through lively streets stirred up conflicting desires battling against reason. The festival approached quickly, anticipation mingled with dread weighed heavy upon shoulders already burdened by secrecy. It felt inevitable somehow. Confrontation awaited just around corner like storm clouds gathering overhead ready unleashing torrents upon unsuspecting souls below. On festival day itself, the sun shone brightly illuminating Richmond's charm while laughter echoed through bustling streets filled with families enjoying shared moments, but within me lay tumultuous emotions threatening eruption any time. As we navigated through throngs gathered together, my husband's hand clasped firmly around mine while occasionally stealing glances toward grandson who walked alongside us, his presence electrifying even amidst cheerful chaos surrounding us. Then came unexpected moment when amidst laughter echoing off brick walls decorated by colorful banners, the grandson turned toward me suddenly catching me off guard entirely. "I can't hold back anymore," he declared loudly enough for others nearby to hear, a bold statement echoing through air thickening around us instantly. My heart dropped into pit of stomach while shock rippled through crowd nearby, all eyes now turned toward us waiting breathlessly for response either way. I stood frozen, the weight of his declaration hanging heavy in the air. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, their eyes darting between us, eager for a reaction. I could feel my cheeks flush, warmth creeping up from my neck to my face, betraying the tumult of emotions swirling inside me. The festival lights twinkled above us like distant stars, but all I could focus on was the thundering of my heart. "Are you serious?" I managed to whisper, though it felt more like a plea than a question. The laughter and chatter of the festival faded into an indistinct hum as I searched his face for any sign that this was a joke or a miscalculation. He stepped closer, his voice low yet steady. I can't pretend anymore." There was a fierce determination in his eyes that both thrilled and terrified me. Around us, conversations resumed, but our bubble felt impenetrable. My mind raced back to moments spent together, the stolen glances at family dinners, the quiet conversations in the kitchen while preparing meals. Each memory sharpened into focus now, each one laced with a tension that had been building silently beneath the surface. "I can't do this here," I replied urgently, glancing around at the gathering crowd. The last thing I needed was for my husband or anyone else to overhear this exchange. "We need to talk somewhere private." He nodded slightly, understanding the gravity of our situation. Just then, I caught sight of my husband across the way, his smile bright as he engaged with relatives. A stab of guilt pierced through me. How could I betray him like this? Yet another part of me felt an undeniable pull toward what lay ahead with his grandson. "Meet me by the fountain in 10 minutes, he said quietly before slipping away into the throng of festival-goers. I took a deep breath and forced myself to move toward where my husband stood, trying to mask my anxiety behind a polite smile. As we mingled with family and friends, laughter echoed around us while inside I felt a storm brewing, torn between loyalty and desire. As we chatted with relatives about mundane topics, vacations planned and summer barbecues, I couldn't shake off that moment by the stage. My husband's laughter rang hollow in my ears. It felt like a mask over something deeper brewing beneath our surface interactions. "Are you okay?" he asked suddenly, concern knitting his brow together as he studied me closely. "Just tired," I replied quickly. "Long day." It wasn't entirely untrue. Every moment spent wrestling with these feelings left me drained. The festival continued around us. Children ran past with cotton candy while couples danced nearby under strings of lights. Yet all I could think about was that impending meeting by the fountain, a crossroads where decisions would have to be made. Finally excusing myself under some pretense about needing fresh air, I slipped away from the crowd and made my way toward the fountain nestled among blooming flowers, a serene spot amidst all festivities. The soft sound of water splashing against stone provided an oddly calming backdrop for what was about to unfold. He was already there when I arrived, leaning against the edge of the fountain with an intensity that took my breath away. As our eyes locked, time seemed to stretch infinitely between us. Everything else faded away until it was just him and me standing on this precipice together. "I didn't know if you'd come," he said softly as I approached cautiously. "I had to," I replied, though uncertainty gnawed at me like an insistent tide pulling at shorelines, threatening to erode everything familiar if not held back firmly enough. "What do we do now?" His voice broke slightly as he searched for answers within my gaze. I hesitated before responding. Clarity eluded me like shadows dancing just out of reach in fading light. "We need to think carefully. We can't let this ruin everything." His expression shifted slightly, disappointment mingled with understanding, but there was still something unyielding in his eyes that drew me closer despite all reason telling me otherwise. "Why does it feel so right?" he asked quietly after a pause filled only by trickling water from above. "It shouldn't," I admitted reluctantly but couldn't deny how every moment spent together felt charged with something almost electric. A connection too powerful to ignore but also too dangerous to embrace fully without consequences looming over us like dark clouds ready to burst forth at any moment. Before either of us could speak again, footsteps echoed behind us, my husband rounding the corner unexpectedly just as tension reached its peak once more between us two. "There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you," he called out cheerfully before stopping short upon seeing our expressions, a flicker of confusion crossing his features as he sensed something amiss in our proximity. "Everything okay?" He stepped closer while glancing suspiciously between us both, the casual tone not quite masking underlying concern filling his voice now evident even amidst festival music playing behind him softly still within earshot. "Yes, just talking," I replied hastily while trying desperately not to meet anyone's gaze directly too long lest they see through fragile walls built around secrets kept hidden thus far. My heart raced again, caught between two worlds now colliding against one another violently without warning. One side filled with love and loyalty while other beckoned forth desire wrapped tightly within layers upon layers waiting patiently beneath skin waiting for release. The air grew thick around us as silence stretched uncomfortably long until finally breaking free when my husband turned back toward festivities once more without another word spoken aloud, a decision made silently within fractured moments lingering heavily still hanging overhead. But as they walked away together toward family gathering once more without looking back, I couldn't help feeling unresolved threads still tugging insistently deep inside heart yearning desperately for clarity amidst chaos swirling endlessly around. What did it mean? How would things unfold next? My mind spun wildly searching for answers hidden beneath layers yet untangled waiting patiently somewhere close enough within reach if only willing enough risk everything once more. The family gathering buzzed with laughter and chatter, yet a suffocating silence enveloped me. I stood at the edge of the room, surrounded by familiar faces, each one oblivious to the turmoil raging within. My husband mingled with guests, his laughter a stark contrast to the weight pressing down on my chest. The grandson was nowhere in sight, and I felt an unsettling void without him. As I sipped my drink, I caught sight of my husband chatting animatedly with a couple from down the street. His gestures were animated, his smile genuine. Yet beneath that facade lay an unspoken tension that had taken root in our lives. I turned away, focusing instead on the decorations that adorned the room, balloons and streamers hastily thrown together for this celebration. They reminded me of how fragile appearances could be. I wandered outside to the patio, seeking a moment of solitude amidst the festivities. The air was cooler here, carrying with it whispers of distant conversations and laughter from inside. I leaned against the wooden railing and closed my eyes for a moment, trying to gather my thoughts. Then he appeared, his presence cutting through the noise like a beacon in the night. He stepped outside, hands shoved deep into his pockets, his expression unreadable. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over me, relief mingled with apprehension as he approached. "I thought you might need some air," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded but didn't respond immediately. The last time we spoke was laden with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. "It's crowded in there," I finally managed to say. He leaned against the railing beside me, our shoulders almost touching but not quite, a physical boundary that echoed the emotional one we had crossed so many times before. "Are you okay?" he asked after a pause. "Am I okay?" The question hung in the air between us like a fragile thread ready to snap at any moment. "I don't know anymore." His gaze bore into mine as if searching for answers he knew were hidden beneath layers of confusion and guilt. "We can talk about it if you want," he offered cautiously. The invitation hung there tempting me like forbidden fruit. But what would we talk about? The thrill of our connection? The consequences that loomed over us like storm clouds? Or perhaps my husband's unwavering trust that now felt like shackles binding me to a life I no longer recognized? "I don't think talking will change anything," I replied finally, my voice steadier than I felt inside. He sighed deeply, frustration evident in his expression as he ran a hand through his hair. "Maybe it won't change anything right now," he conceded softly. "But it could help." In that moment, something shifted within me, a flicker of hope mixed with despair as if we stood on a precipice overlooking an abyss filled with possibilities yet fraught with danger. Just then, laughter erupted from inside as someone cracked a joke loud enough for us to hear through open doors. It jolted me back to reality, the reality where choices had consequences and where secrets festered beneath smiles. "I should go back," I said abruptly, breaking our gaze and stepping away from him as if distancing myself from temptation itself. "Wait." His voice stopped me in my tracks, there was urgency in it that sent chills down my spine. "What?" I turned back reluctantly. "Before you go, if things were different," he hesitated, searching for words that didn't come easily between us anymore. "If things were different, would you choose differently?" The question hung heavy between us like an anchor pulling me deeper into uncertainty, a haunting reminder of what was at stake should we dare to cross boundaries already blurred by emotion and desire. "I don't know," I admitted honestly as tears threatened to spill over. It felt wrong yet cathartic all at once to voice those feelings aloud amidst such chaos surrounding us both. He stepped closer again. This time there was no distance between us, a mere breath separating our worlds filled with longing and regret intertwined seamlessly together over shared moments lost forevermore. But before either of us could say another word or make another move toward crossing lines drawn long ago, my husband's voice called out from within, "Honey, come join us." The moment shattered like glass underfoot, reality crashed back down upon us both, brutally reminding me where loyalty lay despite everything else tugging insistently at heartstrings yearning desperately for release. I turned toward the sound only to see him standing there watching, with concern etched across his features reflecting something deeper than just familial ties binding us together, still strong even when everything else felt frayed around edges. "Coming," I shouted back more cheerfully than intended while forcing myself not to look at him again, knowing full well how fleeting moments could be yet somehow wishing against all odds they'd last just 1 second longer before fading into nothingness. As I stepped inside again amidst clinking glasses filled with bubbly cheerfulness surrounding everyone else oblivious still, I caught sight of him retreating toward darker corners behind everyone else where shadows danced playfully underneath dim lights flickering overhead, casting long silhouettes across walls painted bright colors masking truths hidden beneath surfaces polished smooth enough not reveal cracks forming deep within hearts entwined together against all odds. And just then, I understood something fundamental. choices made today would echo endlessly throughout tomorrow regardless whether willing accept consequences attached or not. My heart raced wildly as realization hit hard. The weight pressing down heavier than ever before threatening crush everything once held dear while simultaneously igniting flames burning brightly within spirit yearning desperately for clarity amidst chaos swirling endlessly around. Yet standing alone among familiar faces, each one smiling unaware of turmoil brewing below surface, it became painfully clear. Whatever path chosen next would lead somewhere irrevocably altered forevermore, leaving behind pieces scattered everywhere waiting patiently along way needing tending before moving forward again. With every step deeper into celebration-filled laughter ringing out joyfully around me, I couldn't shake feeling something monumental shifted, irrevocably changing course ahead, leaving lingering uncertainty trailing behind, forcing reconsideration, everything chosen thus far leading directly toward inevitable reckoning lurking just beyond horizon, waiting patiently until ready face truth head-on regardless consequences, awaiting discovery waiting silently nearby.